All right. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Today, I am Brian Syring. I am the accounts executive at TechD, and with me today is Marc Martina, a system architect and longtime Cognos user. I will let Marc more formally introduce himself in a second. But for those of you that don't know TechD or Technology Dynamics, we're an IBM Premium Business Partner that focuses on the data and AI portfolio. One of the main solutions or the cornerstone of that portfolio is the Cognos Analytics. Uh, Today, we plan on focusing on some of the enhancements that it's made over the latest releases. Um, Feel free to ask any questions. We like to keep it kind of open as we go. So raise your hand if you have any questions. And with that, I will turn it over to Marc and let him kind of walk through some of the differences between the solutions as we continue to enhance Cognos.
Great. Thanks, Brian. And everybody, thanks for your time today. I appreciate it. Let me start off by sharing my screen. Perfect. All right. Just one or two slides. I'm not a big slide person. But as Brian was saying, we're TechD. We're an IBM business partner. And today we're going to review Cognos Analytics. The latest version is 11.2.3. So just a little bit about us. We're an IBM Platinum business partner. We deal with everything involving data. So ETL work, data warehousing, analytics, obviously things like Cognos Analytics, planning, Watson Studio, anything involving AI, and a variety of other things too. So anything really involving data is pretty much us. I personally have been using Cognos for 20 plus years, so I've definitely seen it from the beginning in its infancy to where it is today. I like to keep things a little freeform too, so if anybody has any questions, feel free to just ask.
And as Marc kicks it off there, you'll see the previous slide kind of walked through all the different areas that TechD does work in, right? So we're resell, design, implement, educate, and consult. Happy to do any one of those across the entire IBM stack, but Cognos in particular.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go over the latest version of Cognos. I included this link, and we'll send it to everybody. And what this link does is it takes you to IBM's website specifically for Cognos Analytics, and it shows you kind of what's new, what's out there. A lot of times I would kind of highlight all the different things that are new, but the list is getting larger and larger, and it'll take up 100 slides. It's not really worth it. But one of the things in this version that kind of sparked interest for a lot of people is, we're currently using Zoom. A lot of people use, WebEx, but Teams seems to be very big, up and coming. So Cognos originally connected with Slack, and now they've done that integration with Microsoft Teams. So if you're a big team shop, instead of emailing people reports or things like that, you can actually start sending things using your streams in Microsoft Teams. So that alone is a reason for people to upgrade. Not really sure what version everybody's on here, or if maybe you're just looking at Cognos and you don't currently run Cognos, but people a lot of times are looking for a feature to go from 11.2.1 to 11.2.2 to 11.2.3, like something that's a reason for them to do the upgrades, because the releases come out fairly often, maybe on average every quarter, 3 to 6 months, something like that. And it's hard to keep up with every iteration, so a lot of clients skip some of them. So this is a big reason for people to jump up. So I've got clients that are on 11.1.7, which is pretty the last of the .1 releases, and now a lot of them are going up to the 11.2 solely for this reason. And so here's just my contact information, Brian's as well, and some other people you might be hearing from who usually kind of customer facing, maybe Bob and Garrett, who also work on the sales side and pre-sale side. So these might be names that you know. And so here's some contact information. And that's pretty much it for the slides. So at this point, let's take a look at the product. And so if I go to Cognos, and one thing I might want to do real quick is, just so you know, this is that link I was sending you. So this shows you the latest version 11.2.3 and all the different features. This is 11.2.3. There's one for 11.2.2, 11.2.1. So if you're on, let's say 11.2.1 and you want to know what's going to be new in 11.2.3, you literally have to look at everything that was changed in 11.2.2 and 11.2.3, and that combination of features is essentially the feature list that you're going to gain by going to 11.2.3. Right? If it's one or two versions, it's not that big of a deal. If you're in the 11.1 world or 11.0 world, the feature list is going to be massive. So if anybody's on 11.0 anything, my recommendation is to upgrade, just because the amount of enhancements that have been done definitely warrant it. So please do it. If you're on 11.1, much better than the 11.0 release. But one of the massive differences they did between 11.1.7, the last of the 11.1 releases, and 11.2.1 is they re-engineered the front end. And they did an excellent job of it. Pretty much everything in my mind that I think needed to be tweaked, adjusted, fixed, rearranged, they actually did. And it's a much better interface. So if you're in the 11.1 world, maybe you're happy with it, great. But there will be a little bit of a transition. Your reports were in a folder before, they'll still be there. But now they're going to be just with a different front end. Right? So it's not a hard transition, and everything that is adjusted is really done for the best. So that being said, let me close this and let me go to Cognos Analytics.
We do have a question that we may have to table, but have you ever connected to Databricks with Cognos?
I think at one point we might have. Is somebody trying to do that and they're having an issue?
Yes. So Rita, we can touch base offline to kind of discuss some of the issues you're having and see how we can assist.
Yeah, we would want to know probably what version you're on. If you're on the latest version, maybe an older version, and we could probably run some kind of test on our own. Let you know if it connects for us, and if so, then probably help you out from there. Let me log in here real quick. Okay, so this is the interface for Cognos 11.2.3. The front end interface really hasn't changed between 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, but this is a massive difference if you use anything pre the 11.2 world. So 11.1, 11.0, the interface is massively different. All right. So just kind of go over some of the changes, because I know a lot of people are still in the 11.1 world. One thing is that they've taken the search, instead of it being part of the pull down, it's actually here in the top right, which is kind of where it should be. If you go to any website, you want to do a search, it's always usually a search bar at the very top on the right-hand side. So they just put it in kind of the natural place. Another thing is that everything now comes under the hamburger. So if you've ever wondered what those couple lines are called, people kind of refer to it as a hamburger because it looks like, patty and bun. So there's your hamburger. And then they've kind of rearranged this a little bit as well. So things that they've done is now everything comes under new, and they've color-coded things, grouped things. So your data module, exploration, this is all still here, but now they've just kind of categorized it. Data modules involving data, exploration is kind of its own beast as well. And then whenever you're presenting someone to anyone, you can create a report, a dashboard, or a story, which is like a storyboard. And then the other is a job. Usually the admins kind of do the jobs. Jobs are essentially groupings of reports. So if you want to schedule 10 reports to run, rather than going to 10 different reports and scheduling it, you can put them all in the job. A lot of benefits to that, because you can run them at the same time, or you can run them sequentially, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can share prompts and things like that. So jobs typically make things easier. So that's there as well. Upload, if you're familiar with upload, you can upload files right in the Cognos. There's a variety of reasons why you might do this. Some people don't realize how powerful the upload feature is. So one could be that you just have an Excel file that you want to upload. because it's too big, causes you problems. In Excel, anything that gets 100,000 rows, 200,000 rows in Excel tends to take absolutely forever to open up. You try to do a VLOOKUP like that with 2 large tabs, you're in trouble. You can just upload the entire Excel file into Cognos, create any report, any kind of pivot table you want, any dashboard right out of the gate. So that's one really powerful use for it. But then another one, which a lot of people aren't aware of, is you can take data and integrate it with your existing data. So an example of why somebody would want to do that. One thing that's very common is that maybe things like sales reps, they roll up to different territories and that changes all the time. Well, rather than having this in a database and the DBA take care of this, and you have to create a ticket and it takes 3 to 5 days, this, everything else, you can literally upload that information in Excel, join it to your actual large data set that has your regions, your territories, your states, things like that. And now you group by the data that's in Excel. This way, later on, if you decide to change something, you can just update the Excel file, upload it again, and overwrite what was there. So it's a great way of the business having some control over the data set. That's one great use for it. Another use for it that's important is, maybe some numbers that change all the time. So if you have some type of rates that you're using for calculations, and that's something that varies. So you're doing something with currency conversion or mortgage rates, things like that. That's something that is dynamic. You can easily just change it on your own and upload it into the system. And now your report, your dashboard, your storyboard, whatever's sitting on top of that automatically updates. No code changing needed. It just works. Next, we have the content, and content is completely redone. So your My Content, which is kind of like your My Folders was back in the day, is here. Your team content is here. And so if you're not on 11.2 yet, this is a massive change. But what's nice is whatever folder it was in before, it's still in now. So you don't have to worry about that. All right. But it is just a different look and a feel, but it's a lot easier. Before, there were all the slide out panes. The slide outs did not work well. They had them everywhere in the 11.0 world. They skinnied the use of them down in 11.1, and then they're pretty much 99% gone in 11.2. So you don't have to worry about that at all. It makes more logical sense if I look something up. So before, if I go to recent, there's a slide out, but that's it. Now before, if I clicked on maybe this folder, right? What would happen would be there'd be another slide out, and I was kind of stuck in the slide out world. Now, if I click on it, it literally takes me to that exact folder structure, and it's just a much better thing. We're in a better world. Going forward, so we've got our recents, and then manage. So manage is kind of where everybody's going with it. So the IBM console is still here. So for historical purposes, you still see it. But everybody is, not everybody, everybody's kind of like moving away from it because there's just certain things that you can't do. Anything that's new is not going to show up in here. Right. So if you go to, if I go to, back to my admin tools and I go to something like collaboration, this is where I'm going to be able to create a connection. It's going to ask me whether I want Teams or Slack. So I want Teams. This is where we're going to come in and configure everything for Teams. It's a new feature. New features are always going to be under manage and not the old admin interface. So if you're used to that interface, that's great. You've got to start getting used to the newer interface. One, it's a little bit slicker, but two, anything new is only going to show up there. One thing that's really important, which I should probably tell people as well, is data sources. Right? So you've got data server connections here. In this case, I have one called Weather Company. And then if I go to my old school interface and I go configuration and I go data sources here, I've got Weather Company as well. And I've got something called a TechD server connection. So they're not the same. When it comes to data sources, there's a big difference. And this is good to know if you're starting to use the new features. If I create a data source in the old interface, It's in the old interface and only in the old interface. If I create it in the new interface, not only will Cognos create it here, it will automatically create one that shows up in the old interface. This is very important because when you're starting to use the new features, using data modules, you want to pick a data source. It's never going to pick from this list. Instead, it's going to pick from this list. So a lot of people have been using Cognos for 10, 15, 20 years. It's backwards compatible, which has been excellent for people. They don't have to rewrite anything. It just works. They get newer features, newer functionality, support for newer browsers, which works out perfect. But the one negative is that a lot of times people don't do anything new. The new features are slick, they look better, they work better. They're also features that are solely there to improve performance, make things run faster, not just look better as well. So it's just a variety of reasons to start using the new tech. So if you come into here and you see nothing here, and then if you go to your old version and you see a ton of data sources here, you're not using any of the new features, is pretty much what that means. All right, and you've got to make that change. You've got to start creating them on the front end using JDBC drivers, using the new interface. You don't have to delete any of your old ones, but you've got to create new connections. And once you do that, you can start utilizing them with your data modules and your data sets. All right. So that being said, let me kind of do a quick upload here and kind of show you a few things. So if I come over here, and I select data, let's see. So I've got some demo data. So I've got something called multi-tab. So I'm going to just select this. It's really small. I'm just doing it just for demo purposes. But when it comes to uploading data into Cognos, thousands of rows is not a problem. What people don't realize is hundreds of thousands of rows is not a problem. We've got clients that are uploading, 500,000 million row files. We're caching things that are a million records or a million rows under the covers, and everything is perfect. So when you do upload it, what's good to know is it immediately goes to your My Content. You have no choice. This is where it goes, which is fine because it's out of the way of everybody. You can play with it here and then later move it to Team Content so other people have access to it. If you leave it where it is now, you create the most beautiful report or dashboard in the world. Nobody will be able to run it because they don't have permission for the data source because it's in your content. So good things to know, right? So once I upload a data source, what can I do with it? So now I've got my file. Well, if I want to make it available for everybody, I just click on it, click on the little dots, copy or move. And what I'll do is, hope my screen doesn't totally lock up. There we go. What I can do is I can take it, I go to my team content. If I want, I can create a folder. And I can move it right to that folder. Now that it's here, right? It's in a place that other people can potentially get to it based upon security. And then I can start utilizing it. So if I click on the dots right now, it shows me exactly what I can do. The intelligent menu that pops up. So I can replace or append the data, right? So maybe it's a data that has yearly values. Another year shows up. I want to add another year's worth of data. Rather than wiping out the old, I append the new. I've got an extra year. If it's something that I'm changing, a lookup of who's in what position, I'll probably do a replace, right? I can also from here create a dashboard or an exploration or data module. But one thing I cannot create is a report. The reason is that your reports only work against data modules or packages. They won't work against the actual pure data set, but a dashboard will. So if I want to dashboard something out real quick, I can do that. If not, no big deal. I come in here, I create a data module, and it's easy to do. So if I do that, here's my interface for data module. They've added a lot of features to this. So if you are using data modules or if you haven't, this is one thing that a newer version is very important for. Tons of new features, tons of new functionality, enhancements in just the user experience. They've added a ton because the whole purpose of this is to at some point replace Framework Manager packages. So if you have packages, that's fine. It's still supported. It'll probably be supported forever. But if you're doing something brand new, or if you want to use some new features, you want to use a data module. So I click on here. It's in grid mode, so it shows me a preview of what my data looks like. It's great. If I go to relationships, since everything was named the same, it automatically creates relationships for me, which is excellent. So if I didn't want to do anything extra, I could literally just save this data module and start creating reports off of it. Now, if I wanted to make some changes, then now would be the time to do it. So what are changes I might want to make? Well, if I come over here, click on the little down arrow, it shows me what's available in sales. And, I've got unit cost, right? Quantity shipped. I have total sales. Or maybe I want cost shipped, all right? What was the cost of what I shipped? I don't have that calculation, but I've got everything that would make it up. So what I could do is I could just take control, click on these two guys, click on the dots again, create a calculation, set a plus, I would multiply, and that's technically what it is, but in this case, it would be cost shipped. And if I want to do something more complicated, I click here and it brings up the editor, and this editor has every function in it you could possibly want. All the functions that you would also see in Framework Manager show up in here. So if I also want security, I've got all my CSV and CAM ID type functions, and then I've got all my database functions and whatnot. So any kind of manipulation you want to do, you can do. Right. But if I come back over here, get my calc, multiply, and do cost shipped. There we go. Puts at the top by default. Doesn't make a lot of sense. I can literally just drag it down. Easy to use. If I want to clean data, I can do that here as well. So, product line, product type, this is all text fields. I can come in here and I can clean the data. So I can trim it. I can go uppercase or lowercase. I can take a substring of it. So maybe just certain characters are appropriate for me. I can do replaces. So I can do some very simple cleaning in here. And it's great to do it here because it's the one and done. So if I've got some Excel file, rather than adjusting it in Excel and then having to keep cleaning Excel files I get over and over again, if I put all that intelligence in here, I can just keep uploading Excel files, or if it's coming from a database, I don't have to make any changes there. This just fixes everything. I can do things like that. If I want to add more data sources, I can do that as well. So if I want to add new sources, here it says, well, where's the source at? So I can pick, my content, or I can pick the team content, recently viewed, other uploaded files, or if I want to pick data sources, you'll notice that anything that pops up is the weather company. The reason that's the case is because the weather company is the only data source that was connected using the new interface, not the old interface. So that's why if you don't have anything in there, you're not using any new features. I know it because you're not. They're not there. Right? You want to do that. Right? If I want to change my joins, I can do that as well. If I want to recreate them, not a problem. So let's say I want to create the joins. I can do that as well. Let's come over here. Let me just kind of click on this guy, hit delete. Remove. If I want to create it again, I can just highlight the two with Control key, create a relationship. And this interface is excellent for creating joins essentially. Every time you click on something, it shows you an example of what it looks like. So product key I know is going to match up with product key, but if I don't know what the data looks like, I can see it here. So if I was joining some type of dates, sometimes there's different date formats. This will tell me right away whether the format's going to be compatible or not. I would match my selected. In this case, it says 1 to N. I want it to be, instead of 1 to many, I want it to be many to one. There's going to be one product and a whole bunch of sales lines. I match them up. I hit refresh. And if it did it correctly, I should see data on both sides. If it didn't join correctly, I wouldn't see any data at all. If I had some join where there was missing and I did some kind of left outer join, I would see data on one side but not the other. Right. I hit OK, and now my join's done. I can also go to the properties, and the property gives me tons of different options. One of the things that they've done a lot of enhancements for is security. So that was one thing that the data modules were lacking a little bit. And now they've put in a lot of different changes to kind of get around that. Really, the goal is to make it so anything you can do in Framework Manager, you'll be able to do in a data module, plus more. All right, because there's certain things you can do in a data module you cannot and will never be able to do in a package. Framework Manager is completely supported. The packages are completely supported, but they're pretty much stagnant. There's no adjustments being made to them. They're being supported. So there might be some development in there that keep them relevant, but there are no new features coming out with packages. All the new features, all the new functionality is part of the data module. So you've got to start using data modules. Okay. Custom tables didn't exist either. Now they're available. So to create a custom table, you can do a lot of different things with it. You select your tables, you can create shortcuts, aliases. One of the things you couldn't do with data modules back in the day was maybe you have a table you want to bring in multiple times, like a date dimension. You'd have a lot of problems doing that. Now you can just create shortcuts to it or aliases to it, and now you can have it in there 5, 6, 7, 8 times, join it different ways, and the thing just works. Also, a lot of people don't realize it, but on the module itself, you can click on the dots. And that's a lot of times where there's things like filters that you can put in here. You can also create tables using SQL if you wanted to. But if I come in here and I look at filters, I can actually create a filter, and I can add security as well to this. If I like it as is, I come over here, I just do save as. I pick a location, call it sample DM. Now I've created my data module. So once I do that, if I go back to my content, let's see, where am I? Webinar. There's my sample data module. And if I click on the dots here, you'll see I have a lot more options than I did before. So I compare, I've got essentially 3 options available here. If I click here, I've got 5. Right? Things that are different. I can create a data module on top of a data module. I don't necessarily recommend this because you're essentially cascading. I would maybe go one level, no more than that is a best practice. Just because if somebody changes one thing in one data module, it could literally destroy a dozen that are connected to it. So if you have to combine a few things together, such as a package with maybe a data module or a data source, then putting a data module on top is not a bad thing, but I would just avoid doing it a lot. Here you can also see that I can create a report, which I was not able to do before. And one other thing I can do as well is I can create a data set. So just so you know, a lot of people are not using data sets just because it's a new feature. They don't understand what they do, how they work. A data set essentially caches data in Cognos in Parquet files that are very fast to access. So I create data set. What it does is it allows me to literally pick and choose the data I want. So I can do a data set based off any data module I have. And let's say I just want to bring in a little bit of my data. Product line, product type. Instead of design mode, I'm going to do preview mode so I can actually see what it looks like. I've got my unit cost, my sales, my cost shipped, which is my new calculation. I can drag those over. Right? Maybe for org, I want level 1. Right? And now what I can do is I can actually just save this data set. I can do a save as or save and load data. Do save and load data. I'm going to call this sample DS. Hit save. And what's important about this is, again, it's very fast and you can schedule it to run daily, weekly, whenever it's appropriate. And it does a couple things. One, since it's fast, if you have a slow data source, your database isn't very fast, this can hide that issue with your data warehouse by making the data readily available very fast. Especially for things like dashboards where people want things quick. This is perfect for that. Right? It's also good for maybe complex queries. So maybe your database isn't that slow, but you've got a query that joins a dozen things here, does all this crazy stuff. Takes 2 hours to run. Well, you don't want people to run that report throughout the day. That puts a big load on your system. Just run it once. Now, everybody who wants that data throughout the day just points to the data set. And not only does it speed things up, it takes a load off your warehouse, right? So when you're doing things like dashboards, typically users are looking at the exact same data over and over and over again, and it's constantly running SQL against your database. But slow things down, and your dashboards can be slow. Or your reports, right? A lot of reports are literally showing the exact same thing over and over again. What you can do is just cache that data in a data set, create a data module on top of it, and now start creating, all these reports that are going to run really fast. So I save this. I can close out of it. Right. So there's my data set. I can tell my icons are different as well. That's your data set icon. That's your data module. And if I click on the dots here, I can create an exploration or a dashboard off it. But if I want to create a report, I again have to create another data module. So what some people will do is they have a lot of data sets. They'll create a data module solely to create data sets from, and then create a data module that sits on top of that data set, and that's what's available to the users. Okay. Best practice. And again, what this does is it just makes things run faster. There's really no downsides to it, except if it's like a real-time system, you're not running this real time, so your data will be a little bit stagnant, probably from the end of yesterday. But besides that, there's really no downsides. Everything runs fast, easy to use, easy for the users, simpler. You might have a warehouse with 20 years worth of data in it. 99% of your reports might only look at the last 12 to 18 months, just pulling a year or two's worth of data, and everything runs fast. Right? There's a variety of different reasons why you'd want to do this, but again, performance is a big one. Right? So when we have a data module, you can just start creating things off of that. Right? I have some examples of a couple things to show you. So if I go to, let's say, Tech D, and I go to reports, I have a few different examples. So one of the things here is, let's say, dashboard example. So here's an example of a dashboard. Cognos has put a lot into, or IBM has put a lot in the Cognos to actually enhance your experience with dashboards. So one of the things you might see, depending on what version you're on, is if I go edit and I come over here, my visualizations, they've added a couple extra that were not there before. So depending on what you're looking for, I know box plot is a newer one. So if you're looking for box plot, that's available to you. That's something that's brand new. There's also one that is, where is it? Let me see. On a column, network, list, KPI. So KPI is a new one. So if you're looking for some type of KPI, you can drag that across, just put in your measure, and it'll show you the KPI. That one's a newer one as well. That wasn't released in 11.2.3, is maybe a little bit ago. I think somewhere in the 11.2 range, 11.2.1 maybe. So depending on what version you're at, you might not see KPI, you might not see the box plot. So those are things that are brand new. Right. Another thing that's brand new is up here, the assistant. The assistant only used to exist in exploration before. Now it exists in the dashboards as well. So the assistant is like an AI-based chatbot, essentially, where you can actually ask for things to happen, right? So if I come over here, I create a new tab, I go over to my assistant, right? It's going to say, hey, how can I help you, right? Well, if I know what's in my data module, let's see, where's everything? So I've got things like organization name, I've got things like product line, I've got things, and it wants the name to be whatever you named it. So I take a look at what's in here, and yeah, I probably would normally have it memorized, but if I come over here and I'm like, you know, I want to see what product lines have highest sales. So I can ask questions. I can't see any data sources. It's probably because it's a product line. So I want to see product line sales. Again, it just has to be, you know, the same name. So what happens, I come over here and start showing me different visualizations. I'm not sure why it's not really showing. Might be something with my browser. And then what you can do is you can actually create an entire dashboard based off whatever visualization you saw. Maybe my data in here is not so good. I didn't show anything back. Right. But this is something that you're able to do before in exploration. So I created a new exploration. This was available earlier in your assistant. And better. So it gives you a list of different charts and graphs that work. Box plot, crazy spider web guy. So I like, you know, if I like the cloud, I come over here and I create a dashboard from it. And this is by far the fastest way to create a dashboard. It's fast, it's furious, it looks great. What's nice about it is you can keep what you want. If there's something you don't like, you just get rid of it, but it's a great starting point. So it gives me two tabs, one with sales, one with product. Then if I want to go back to one of my dashboards. Right. One thing also that a lot of people don't use, which I think is one of the most powerful things, you know, everybody has their reports. Everybody knows Cognos is great for reports. The dashboards are great as well now. But what's nice is that they're not separate entities you can integrate them to. So one of the best things to do is have a pretty high level dashboard, show you charts, graphs, regions, geography, you know, something that on the fly, if you click, you know, will automatically filter things for you, which is great. But then what you can do is, you know, you can right click and do drill through. So what I've done is I created the drill through report, which is now integrated with my dashboard. So if I want to see all the numbers, like nobody's going to put this on the dashboard. It's ugly. A lot of data, which is it's not appropriate for that. But if I want to filter out using the dashboard and then say, hey, where did this number come from? I can create a detailed report, add it as a drill through, and voila, here we go. And then just like everything else, the report, I can run as a PDF, Excel data, whatever I want. When I'm done, the pull down is still at the top, though they've kind of tweaked it a little bit. It's a little cleaner than it was. But if I close it out, I'm immediately back where I started. So now I'm back at my dashboard. You'll notice too that properties have changed a lot in a couple different ways. One, there's a lot more. Two, they're organized a lot nicer. So if I click on a chart, it shows me all the properties that apply, everything with the axis, and it scrolls for like ever now. So there's a lot more than what you could have done before you can do now. That's one of the big differences. Depending on your version as well, the edit is a lot different. So it's a lot cleaner now. Also, if you want to see what the filters are, they've actually created something specifically for the filters to kind of show or hide. Also your fields. All right. Before, what they had was this bar here, which gave you the ability to kind of change things. It was a floater, so it would always hang out wherever you clicked. So if I clicked here, it would show up here. If I clicked down here, it would show up in this range. And apparently it was driving people crazy because, the thing constantly moved. There's no consistency to it. Now it's just embedded at the top. I think you can probably move it back to floating if you wanted to still, but it's just cleaner. It's easier. Again, that's part of their front-end interface changes they made. So they've done that. They made it so you get to the fields a lot easier than before. You can still expand like you did before, but now the need to do that is much less. All right, all your fields are going to be right here. So properties have changed a lot. They've given you a lot more than you had before. So close out of here. Not saving. Or if I want to go back to my content, I can do that. Or if I want, I can just easily go back to the hamburger and start selecting things this way. Now, if I go to a report, or if I want to create a report from scratch, go to webinar, I've got my data module. Remember, the data module is the only thing, a data module and package, the only things you can create a report off of. All right. So come over here, create a report. This interface has been tweaked a lot. Looks a little nicer now. Still essentially the same thing it was before, but again, just nicer interface. I come in here, I automatically can pick exactly what I want. 9 times out of 10, somebody wants a list. There it is. It's done. My properties are here. Again, the floating bar is gone now. It's always at the top. When I want to drag things over, it's just kind of the exact same way it was before. I can literally double click. I can find my different measures, add them, no problem. If I want to preview it, everything's here for my page preview. It's a lot easier to find than it was before. A lot of things are just simpler now and easier to find. They've changed the top here a lot too. So right now I'm looking at the page. Right before you had to go into like find out where all this stuff was, it was just a little bit of a challenge. Now it's actually really simple. If I want to look at all my pages, no big deal. If I want to look at whatever is in my report, I go up one more level, and now I can look at my pages, my prompt pages, my queries, and it'll show me exactly what that is. Report's always here. So I go to my classes, I go to my different variables if I have them. If I want different render variables, I can do all that stuff here. And it makes life just simpler. So there's not necessarily maybe a ton of extra features, but the interface is a lot better than it was. It's simpler, easier, less challenges. If I want to details properties on my page, it's very easy to find now. Before it wasn't. There's always some funky way you had to get to it. Now it's very simple. It's very obvious. Right. Then if I like it, I save it. Save as. Sample report. Save. Now, some other things have been kind of tweaked a little bit as well. If I go back to my content, I take a look at my sample report. I go to my little dots and I go to properties. Properties are still here, but the interface has changed a little bit. It's a lot cleaner than it was before. Shows you a little bit more things than it did before, right? So I'm pointing to a package or data module. Here's the one I'm pointing to. I can change it now. I wasn't able to do that before. So if I've got, maybe two packages, one points to dev, one points to test, one points to prod, one's one I'm just testing out, I can actually just go to the properties of the report, point it from one package to another. Assuming everything's there I need, it'll just work. I don't have to actually edit the report at all. Very simple to do. Details about the report. Schedule. So schedule's still here. Same features as before, but they've just cleaned it up a lot. So if I want to create a brand new schedule, it's just a totally different interface, but everything you could have done before, you can still do now. There's no loss of functionality. It's just a brand new interface. So I go to options. What do I want to do? I can save it, send an email, send it to mobile, or if I have Slack or Microsoft connected to it, I can actually use that as a source, right? So rather than emailing people, I can actually just send it right to my Slack line or my Microsoft Teams, right? So if you're a Teams shop, then going to 10.2.3 makes 11.2.3 makes a lot of sense. Right. And let's say I like it. I hit save. Now it tells me everything here. I hit close. Then if I come back here, I go to properties, and schedules, it shows me exactly what there is, everything there is here. It's enabled. I can easily disable it. Again, this interface is being used everywhere now to kind of put things in the different modes. So it's very obvious. There's no questions. The dot doesn't just move. The color changes everything. Green means go. If I need to edit the thing, I can edit it here or I can delete it. Easy to do. Right. That's a big interface difference. Right. Other things that have changed, they try to add as much as they can from a help perspective as well. So one of the things is if you go up here, that's Cognos Mobile. So this showed up in 11.2. So what I can do is here, if I click on here, click to load the QR code. Not sure if I totally have it set up, but what you can do here is the QR code. Once you get it up and running, what it'll do is it will actually allow you to just use your camera, click on the QR code, and it'll open up Cognos Mobile and take you to the URL. So you don't have to worry about, typing in some crazy URL. The QR code will just take care of it for you. About is also pretty important. It actually tells you the version you're on, which is perfect. So if you're not sure, go to about. It'll tell you right away. 11.2.3 is your latest. Watched items, that's all pretty much the same. Schedules and subscriptions, all pretty much the same. And if you go to help, so it's got a bunch of different things. So one, you can search for help. Two, it gives you a list of things that are recommended. So based upon what you're looking at the current time, it'll actually change this list, which is pretty cool. You want to go to community, you just click on it. It takes you to the IBM community page, which essentially everybody's on. They ask for, you can blog about things, ask questions, people answer things. So community page works out great. If you're not part of it, I recommend you become part of it. Launch tours. Let's see. And there's also additional support. So you've got documentation. You can even submit an idea if you want to. But documentation, what takes you to the website. So you got all the documentation here. Trending docs, which is obviously the most recent one, and all your different categories. So that helps a lot better than it was before. And they're constantly adding things. And then also, if you go back to the front end, right here, it comes with samples built in. I don't know if you noticed it, but under content, there's a third tab that's called samples. These are samples which Cognos comes with out of the box. So you can get to it that way, or if you go back to the home, you get the samples here and you can look at them, you can view all the samples, or I want to look by feature, by industry. So if I want to check out features, I can go mobile, extensions, custom controls. Your core features are going to be, pretty much your dashboards, your reports, stories, your data modules. So I go to dashboards, and then they have a bunch of different sample dashboards. So the samples are definitely being increased and improved upon as well. So kind of review the flow again. What you want to do is my system here. You want to make sure that you're actually using the data server connections. This is pivotal. Without this, you can't do data sets, you can't do data modules unless you're just basing it off of flat file that you uploaded. Right. So that's extremely important. That's where you want to start. Make sure you've got those in there. If you don't have them, add them. Once you do that, you can start creating data modules off those different data sets. The data modules are much more advanced now than they were before. So literally, there's everything you should be able to do in a data module. Maybe a couple tweaks here and there. Things are a little different in Framework Manager, but really from a functionality point of view, it should be there now. And you create your data module and possibly create reports and dashboards on top of that, or create a data set off that data module and then create another data module on top. For example, I come back in here, create a new data module, right? Before I selected a flat file that I uploaded. In this case, if I don't want to do that, I can go back here, go to webinar, and I can actually click on my data set. And you'll see my data set is exactly what I put into it. It's just a slimmed down version. All right. So there it is. I can add more data sets to it. I can join it to other things. But what I would do is I would create one data module for your data sets. And then once you create your data sets, I would create a data module on top of those data sets and have that available for the users. They shouldn't even see the other ones. And again, everything should be really fast. It should be stripped down to exactly what you need for data. No more, no less. And then just create your data module on top. But then later on down the road, if you need to add something, you can do that. And then, of course, use the data module and then bring in whatever the new field is. So I don't know. Does anybody have any questions or something very specific they wanted to kind of see? We're kind of coming to the top of the hour here.
Yeah, Mark, fantastic job as always. Great job giving a nice overview of everything. Are there any questions before we wrap up the call here?
Actually, one thing I just thought about is I'm talking about upgrading, going to the latest version. The upgrade process is actually becoming improved as well. Literally, all I did to upgrade from 11.2.1 to 11.2.2, I actually jumped from 11.2.1 to 11.2.3. I just pointed it, the installation, and it automatically updated everything. The upgrade ability of the installer has gotten way better since it was in 11.0 days, 11.1 days. So the upgrades are easy. So just note to self, it should not be like a 6-month project. It should be pretty quick. And that's all I had, Brian.
Thanks again. If anyone has any questions or follow-up, feel free to email, call myself, Mark, Bob, Garrett, team. We're here to assist. And with that, we will wrap up the recording. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you.